So yeah, Glenn, thanks for joining us on the Sales and Sports podcast. Really, it's really a privilege to have you on. I guess as we've spoken about, the main agenda for this is to raise an awareness to a career in sales for those that might be tech curious or looking to get into the space. So we'd love to hear more about yourself in terms of what you're doing, and if you could give an introduction to your work at Seismic and what you're doing and how I guess you got into the tech space, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, no, thank you, and both. Thanks for having me on, Jack. I know when we spoke a few weeks ago, what you guys are doing is really cool. And any way that I can help people get through barriers that present themselves to people trying to get in tech, the better, really. So yeah, I'm Glenn Hill. I have worked in tech sales now for just over 2 years. Working at a company called Seismic, based out in the US, but we've got a fairly large EMEA presence. Seismic is global leader in sales enablement. So we allow salespeople to be more productive. We arm them with the right training, with the right content, with the right insights to have engaging conversations with buyer, to move that buying cycle along as quickly as they can and increase average deal sizes with those deals. So from my standpoint, it's quite interesting being a salesperson working for a company that sells to salespeople. I'd say I've got a fairly realistic insight into how sellers work, how their minds work, and what it takes to sort of impress salespeople and get into the industry. So yeah, that's a little bit about Seismic. I work as a SDR leader at Seismic at the moment, so I've got a team of 6 under me. 3 of the 6 are selling into our sort of mid-market and growth accounts. So any accounts with between 50 and 2,000 people. And then the other 3 are selling into large sort of enterprise and global accounts. So your Microsofts, your Googles, your IBMs of the world. And those 2 teams have a very, very different approach to what they do on a daily basis. And it's quite interesting to see that, actually. So yeah, that's what I'm doing at the moment. I joined Seismic to work as part of the financial services team. So selling to some of the largest global banks, wealth managers, asset managers, private equity firms in the globe. And again, requires a very, very different sales process, a very different mentality, selling to what is probably classed as a slightly more traditional old school industry. So yeah, that's me. Prior to Seismic, I worked in finance and accountancy recruitment for just over 3 years. And yeah, managed to progress quite quickly there and progress quite quickly at Seismic without having any sort of degree. I can get into a little bit later as to how I managed to swerve that one. And I know we'll probably touch on the imposter syndrome piece a little bit later on as well, which most likely stemmed from the fact that I took a slightly less conventional route into the world of tech sales.
Amazing. No, we were just looking at your profile earlier, and it just shows how quickly you've risen from an SDR into a management role. So I'm sure we'll touch upon that later. But what really sprung out to you about the tech world, and why did you transition from, I guess, a recruitment career going down into the tech route, and how did you find that transition? And just talk to me about the process in terms of becoming an SDR for the first time.
Yeah, no, it was actually a much more seamless transition than I expected. So in recruitment, I joined a company called Robert Half when I was 19, fresh faced out of school. Within 2-3 weeks, I was plonked in front of CFOs, financial directors, and essentially told to sell to them, which was terrifying, as you'd imagine. But a quick wake-up call as to how to act in a fairly corporate world. So progress through there, and then the majority of my role was selling on a day-to-day basis. We're obviously speaking with candidates, but cold calling, financial directors, CFOs, FCs, and selling our services, selling candidates essentially. So although recruitment doesn't feel like it's similar to tech sales, there's a lot of skills from a resilience position, from a how to hold yourself in professional conversations that transfer really easily over to tech. It was actually one of my now girlfriend who got me into tech sales. She moved from recruitment over to a company called Databricks, who fairly well known in the industry now. And she said to me, she was like, "You absolutely have to move. the rate at which you can progress,
Mm-hmm.
the culture of these companies, the amount of money they have behind them, the amount they invest into the people in the businesses is crazy. Tech obviously being a fairly new industry to many, a lot of people don't realize how lucrative it is. So kind of took her word, believed her, and got the role at Seismic. And again, it was tough to start with, being plonked again in front of Citibank, HSBC, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and told to sell a product that I didn't really know was pretty daunting. But as time goes on, you start to back yourself. You have repeated conversations. You convince yourself that you can do the role, and that's sort of how I've progressed, really. So started in financial services, selling to smaller clients, then got promoted into a more senior role, selling into larger clients, and then moved across at the end of last year into the management role. So a varied background, but I would urge anyone that has a glimpse of sales experience, or even if they don't, to look at technology. I think I've referred about 5 or 6 of my friends that are now all SDRs. Not all of them thank me for it, because it's hard, but there's no doubt about how lucrative the industry is, and also how well you can do in such a short space of time, from a progression standpoint, from a learning standpoint, but also from an earning standpoint. You guys will know as well as I do how lucrative it is in that sense.
Yeah. Glenn, from an SDR's perspective, what would you probably say has been the main difference when it comes to how you see the SDR role when you were actually in it, and how now you're a manager? Sort of, how do you view the role from those two perspectives? Yeah,
it's a really good question. To be honest with you, from a management point of view, it's just don't overcomplicate it. I think when you're sat in an SDR role, there's so many moving parts. There's so much pressure on you to cold call, to hit your numbers, to have great conversations. And especially nowadays, there's so much technology out there that helping SDRs, it can become quite convoluted. From a management position, taking a step back, being able to analyze people's stats, just define a very, very strong process early doors, and stick to your process and simplify the role, because it can quite quickly become overwhelming if you overcomplicate it. And overwhelming means that you'll stop enjoying it, you'll stop performing as well, and you'll get in a vicious cycle of doing that. So yeah, my advice to anyone, having been in this role and an SDR role, and I did it myself when I was an SDR, just really simplify. Okay, each day, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to book a meeting. How do I book a meeting? Let me pick up the phone and have a normal, honest, transparent conversation with someone who's human as well.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, just a follow-up question from that. I was looking at your sort of LinkedIn profile earlier, and within your first role, congratulations, by the way, obviously you were exceeding target 9 out of 9 months, which is brilliant. But I think from our community's perspective, the people that exceed target, they do something different than what the average SDR would do. So what would you say was the one characteristic or the one quality that you then sort of displayed consistently that helped you continuously exceed target, not just meet target?
Yeah, I think for me, it was a mix of having, as I mentioned earlier, a really well-defined, but importantly, scalable process that I can fall back on every single day. Like if I'm overcomplicating things, I'm getting confused, I just go back to basics. Okay, what am I here to do? So that's half of it. It's having a scalable process that you can repeat daily, weekly, monthly. And then the other part is the creativity. Like, as I mentioned earlier, all we're trying to do is have conversations with people. There are more SDRs, there are more salespeople out there than there ever have been, that are trying to get the attention of, heads of sales, heads of marketing in huge corporate businesses.
Yeah.
So any way that you can differentiate and have an honest conversation is going to be a relief to whoever picks up that phone. A lot of people go into sales very scripted. They feel like they have to say certain things. I think a vulnerability of going into a call and, prepping who they are and what they care about and what their business does, but almost going in and acting like a normal person. Don't be afraid to stumble. Don't be afraid to take a pause. Don't be afraid to step over your words. Just have a really, really simple conversation with someone, and that's what I did. But obviously scaled it weekly, monthly, quarterly, and that's what allowed me to come in. And I mean, I was given MVP for the first 2 quarters at Seismic, which was really cool. And again, back to the imposter syndrome piece. showed me quite quickly that, I could do the job if I really focused and put my mind to it.
Awesome. And just touching upon the imposter syndrome, would love to touch upon that. I mean, we spoke a couple of weeks back about your transition with someone without maybe a university degree into the space, which I think is epic. And we're trying to empower more people to get into tech sales, which, they might not have had a certain university degree or formal education. So we're trying to really change that by giving folk a bit of an education and bridge into the space. So talk to me about, I guess, what advice you'd give someone that maybe hasn't had a degree and is maybe nervous about applying into a tech role. Because I know lots of the jobs traditionally said you have to have, 1 year of sales experience or 1 year of tech experience, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's the case. So I guess advice for folk looking to get into the tech space that may not have gone to uni, but also, I guess, from your standpoint, we get folk even on our academy that are asking us bits of advice if things aren't going well, or they might have certain bits of imposter syndrome. How would you combat that? And I guess where did that stem from your side, and how did you deal with that? So yeah, quite a lot of questions, but I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I'll do my best to touch on all of them. Probably the best way to explain it is talking through my own experience. And by the way, I think it's changing. I think the more businesses are hiring people without a certain background, without certain degrees or experiences, and proving that they can exceed without them, the more confident business is going to be to do in future. So for me, I as a 19-year-old lad up sticks from Nottingham, moved to Leeds within about a week of getting my job and sort of throwing myself in at the deep end. But to get that job, I applied, I got rejected. It happened time and time again, and everyone I spoke to just said, "Yeah, look, you sound nice, but you've got a degree, so we can't have a conversation." And it took for me to actually find the associate director's mobile number, cold call him, and said, "Hey, I've spoken to your recruiter. They've rejected me from the role. Appreciate that. However, here's my 30-second pitch on why I think I deserve a conversation with you." And to be fair to him, he was like, "I really like that. This job is about picking up the phone, making yourself feel uncomfortable, and you've demonstrated that before even starting the role." So, got on the train down to Leeds and had a conversation with him. Unfortunately, managed to get that job. The exact same thing happened to me at Seismic. Applied, got rejected from the recruitment team because I didn't have a degree, and it took for me to message my now manager and say, "Hey, done this before, get a bit sick of it," but kind of break into his day and say, "This is why I think you should give me a chance." And I think that's the beauty of sales, because you can demonstrate before you've even got a job how you engage with people. You can show what skills you have. You can show how creative you can be in capturing people's attention, speaking to them, building up credibility on the phone. So for me, the imposter syndrome came from the fact that I had to break into people's day, that I had to sort of go above and beyond and almost force my way into these roles, which, looking back, I'm proud and I'm glad I did, but it shouldn't have to be like that, I don't think. For me at Seismic, the way that I've, and in recruitment, to be fair, the way that I've combated it is saying yes to everything. Like absolutely anything, whether it be coming on a podcast, whether it be leading a training session, whether it be doing a talk, whether it be learning a new product, whatever it is, just saying yes to everything that you get asked. Not only is it going to help you improve, it's going to make you feel uncomfortable and get comfortable with feeling uncomfortable, but it's going to prove to you that anything that you set your mind to, you can do. And I think imposter syndrome is such a difficult one because it's a mental thing, and it can be for any reason at all. For me, it's the fact that I didn't have a certain degree and I didn't have a certain education. For a lot of people, it's the culture that they're from, that they, it's a different culture to maybe what team's looking for. For some people, it's they're a woman in tech and they're coming into a very male-dominated industry. I think whatever the reason for it, proving to yourself time and time again that you are actually credible and you deserve to be in that seat, the more you'll start to convince yourself that actually you should be there and you deserve to be there. So yeah, convoluted way to answer that, but I think being a yes person and always taking challenges is just going to make you a much more confident person, especially in sales.
I appreciate that. And a bit of a two-pronged question here. I think from what you're saying in terms of just being rejected and having the the courage to pick up the phone anyway and sort of go create your own destiny. I've always said to people, like, when you're getting into sales, you need a big why. So, I can tell, and this is a bit personal, right? But I can tell there's a fire in you that comes from somewhere, right? And there's a why you do what you do. Would you mind sharing that why? Where does that motivation and fire come from? And B, now when, as you're an SDR manager and you're looking to hire people, what do you look for? What key traits and qualities do you look for in people before hiring?
Yeah, it's a fair point, by the way. and actually, I moan about the fact that I've had to sort of force my way into the industry, but I genuinely do think that fired the why. And the why initially for every new role that I've got has been, I need to prove myself that I should be here. Whether they like it or not, whoever's hired me have probably doubted me when I first started and thought, taking a risk on this guy, is it going to pay off? And for me, it was just initially that first 6-month period, the fuel to fire me was, I should be here. I need to prove to me, I need to prove to the business, to my team that I should be here. And that's what made me work so hard. That's what made me stay on later, wake up earlier, do more work, put more effort in, ask more questions, speak to more people, get more advice. So initially it was the proving myself piece. As time goes on in the SDR role, you become much more confident. And I think it's really important to keep yourself motivated by challenging yourself.
Yeah.
The SDR role is difficult to pick up initially, but once you've got a grasp on it, it becomes a much simpler job than people expect and people think. So constantly giving yourself short, medium-term goals, whether it's I want to learn this certain product, it's I want to be able to demo in front of a client, it's I want to have a latter stage deal cycle conversation with a client, whatever it might be. This is what I've done. I've set myself sort of short, medium-term goals to strive towards that. And that keeps me engaged. It keeps me motivated, but it keeps me challenged and it keeps me learning. And in sales, I think there's a very easy opportunity to get complacent and coast when you know what you're doing. And the best people in my team and the best people that I've seen progress through Seismic are always the people that get to a certain point and then go, okay, what's next? Who can I speak to ask advice? Who can show me how to do a demo? Who can show me how the back end of the platform looks? It's always having that natural curiosity, I think. And the curiosity piece is the second part of your question, Johnny, what I look for. When interviewing, I do sort of 5-6 interviews a week at the moment because we're hiring, and you get as a hiring manager, you get in a routine of hearing the same things. That people are asking you the same questions, and whether you like it or not, it's hard to differentiate. It really is. What I tried to do when I was applying for roles, but my advice to anyone would be bold. Like, change up the approach that you read online. That's how you interview. Come up with some slightly left field questions. Ask us about why we do what we do. Ask questions like, honestly, what do you think about me? Have you got any reservations? Show that you can have an engaging but slightly difficult conversation on an interview. Preparation is always key. If someone's not prepared, we'll discount them almost immediately. And it's back to that curiosity piece. It's, does someone want this interview because they want a new job, or does someone genuinely care about Seismic, about the growth that we've seen? Have they read about it? Have they researched it? Do they understand it? And I'd much rather hire someone that is slightly weaker and slightly less experienced in terms of sales, but makes it up with that natural curiosity, the research, the hard work, the creativity, the being bold. I did a talk at an event a couple of weeks ago, and someone asked me what makes a great SDR, and I've said 50-50 split of raw materials. Are you confident? Are you resilient? Can you have engaging conversations? Are you staying organized? And then that process, that hard work. And there's people in my career that I've seen have one side of it but not the other, and they've not been successful. And at first glance, they look like a great salesperson. But you see them on a day-to-day basis, and they don't put the hard yards in, and they won't progress. Equally, I've seen people on the other side that might not be the most confident, articulate salespeople you'll ever meet, but they make up for that gap in determination, hard work. So I think it's just being able to demonstrate on an interview that you've got both of those things in equal measure. But mix it up. ask some rogue questions, like break into our day. We don't want to go through the same conversations, answer the same questions, hear the same research, talk about the same case studies. Like spend the extra 10 minutes on finding out some different information that the other candidates won't have done.
I have to say as well, it's a compliment backed up with another question. I think something that I would add on to that is something that you've demonstrated throughout this call. I mean, I came onto the call, I was hot. I'm thinking the weather's going crazy outside. All of a sudden I come on, right? And you're speaking from a place of great humility, right? You're speaking from a place of great humility and transparency as well. And I can feel the words that you're saying. And it's sort of, I'm all into energy transfers and stuff like that. So, you know, I can feel the energy that you're delivering, what you're delivering with. And I really appreciate that. And I think a lot of people, when they go into these roles, having that humility to sort of recognize and ask the questions that you want to know so you can keep on improving. And on that sort of basis about transparency as well, before I got into the industry, it was quite difficult. And I don't like to be the boy that cries wolf, but the facts are, as a young black man, it was always difficult to sort of make a big impression or a good impression in an interview. So what's sort of your perspective and your take on diversity within the industry, as well as the participation of women as well? Because having experienced it, I have such a strong and passionate viewpoint of it. But I'm always keen to speak to people like yourself that started from the entry role and now you're a leader in the industry. How do you view diversity as a subject within the industry?
Yeah, it's a really, really fair point. And yeah, thank you for being so honest about that as well. We've got a really, really great opportunity now. There's a younger generation of leaders coming through the tech industry, and there's two options. Either we continue to do what, you know, our predecessors have been doing before us, which is, you know, not changing the way that we hire, not changing the way that we promote people internally, or we can make a difference. And for us, diversity conversations shouldn't really be happening anymore. It's clear we shouldn't be having to bring it up. We shouldn't be having to prioritize these conversations, but unfortunately we are. And for me as a sales leader, I want to encourage anyone to get into sales. And again, I think that's the beauty of tech sales, right? You don't need a certain education. You don't need a certain, you know, background, or you don't need to be from a certain culture. You need to have an internal hunger. You need to be confident, and you need to want it. And that's the beauty of sales, right? You can be anyone. For me, diversity, I have a diverse team in Seismic. Two reasons I like it. One, it sets the precedent for people wanting to get into the industry. They can look up, they can see on LinkedIn that there's people from all different backgrounds, different ethnicities, men, women. But also, it adds a different dynamic to the team. If you've got a team of very similar, like-minded people, which in sales is often the case, you're going to talk about the same stuff. You're going to be in your own little world. You're going to be in your own bubble. You won't experience the same things. And for me, it actually adds value to the company and to the sales team by having people that have been brought up differently, that have had different backgrounds from different cultures, because you become more aware of everything. And I think that's a really important part of sales, is encouraging people to get into the industry regardless of anything that, you know, is belonging to them. So yeah, we've got an opportunity to make a difference, and I do think tech will probably lead the way, because we've got quite a unique young generation of leaders coming through, as I said earlier, that want to make a difference and understand the importance of making a difference. So yeah, let's watch this space, and hopefully as the years pass on, you know, we're going to see a much different trend within the world of software sales.
I have to agree and appreciate the answer as well. It's encouraging, not only for myself, but I think for people that are looking to get into the industry as well, because as you know, EnterTech, that's one of my big focus, to sort of raise that awareness through education, right? And tell people it doesn't matter where you're from. And I think I have to agree on that point as well, in terms of people from different backgrounds certainly add different values and add, you know, a different perspective to life as well. I mean, even when you speak about sports, for example, I mean, Jack's a Liverpool fan, I'm a Chelsea fan, so that's always an interesting conversation after a weekend. But I'm gonna let Jack sort of ask the question about sports and business, because it's something that he's quite passionate about, and as am I. And I think we apply a lot of the principles that we see in sports do business. But Jack, I'll let you lead that questioning in a way that you want to.
100%, 100%. I think two questions which would be great to touch upon. First one is non-sports related, but tell me about, the perks of being in tech sales. Apart from the financial rewards, talk to me about any cool offsites or sales kickoffs you've been to and president clubs, because I think that's really cool to elevate that side of tech sales to those that are looking to get in. And then, of course, sports-wise, what do you see are the main crossovers between sales and sports? And I saw from your LinkedIn you're a Nottingham Forest fan. I could be wrong. Could be completely
You're not wrong.
rogue with that. But I'd love to know how that
Nail on the head.
relationship goes as well.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, fortunately, I joined Seismic mid-pandemic, so I missed out on the trip to Boston for my training. I missed out on our activity in San Diego. I missed out on our sales kickoff in San Diego. So I was told about all these amazing things and hear stories and stories, but I'd never actually been. Outside of obviously the financial reward, as we've talked about today, I've been at Seismic for just over 2 years, joined as a BDR in the most entry level role that you can get in tech, and I'm now able to manage an amazing team of 6 SDRs, and hopefully will continue to progress. And I do think because of the scale and the growth of technology, there aren't many other industries that you can come in and progress that quickly. There's fantastic salespeople in all sorts of different industries that I genuinely don't think have progressed because the industry isn't as fast paced and there's not opportunity to do so. So number one is progression. If you want to come in and learn heaps of new skills, but also meet some amazing people and progress quickly and get into like a management position, then it's an amazing path. Of course, there is all sorts of perks. In my sort of 5th or 6th month at Seismic, I was able to actually go out to Monaco for a week to attend a financial services event.
Nice.
Put us up in an absolutely gorgeous hotel and spent a week with colleagues and clients out in Monaco. I'd never been before. It was absolutely ridiculous. And actually, back to the imposter syndrome piece, being plonked in that scenario with some of the country's most successful, intelligent people that work at these large corporate investment banks in Monaco, it was kind of a reality check for me. It's like, wow, I shouldn't be here, but somehow I've wangled my way. And it's events like that make you think, okay, right, I deserve a place here. So that was a wicked experience. I've been to heaps of events and met loads of really cool people, and we're actually off to San Diego in 3 weeks for what we call activity. So company-wide, 2,500 people flying from UK, Paris, Dusseldorf, Australia, all descending on San Diego for a week of activities and talks and I'm sure drinks and dinners and things like that. So, and Seismic are paying for the whole thing. So again, the way that tech do it is pretty unique, but God, it keeps people interested and keeps people engaged, and you've got some amazing stories to tell from it too.
Love that. That's unreal. I think definitely travel's one of the major perks. But yeah, San Diego, 2,000 people, they're all flying in to San Diego.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are based in San Diego anyway, so probably a fifth of the company are based out of there. But people flying in from New York, Boston, Indianapolis, and then Europe and Asia. So we've actually hired out Petco Park, which is the San Diego baseball ground, and we're there for 4 days doing sessions on the actual pitch. So again, never thought 2 years ago that would be in a scenario where I'm getting all expenses paid trip out to San Diego and meet some really cool people and actually not do a whole lot of work. So yeah, if that's not an incentive, I don't know what is.
No complaints there.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And then sporting, yes, I am a Nottingham Forest fan. Up until this year, I'd be ashamed to say it, but very, very proud, seeing as though it's first time back in the Premier League in 20 odd years. In fact, we were last in the Premier League when I was born, so that goes to show how big a deal it is.
Why Forest?
Born in Nottingham, don't like Notts County, hate Derby. essentially, the long and short of it. Now, my family used to go to Forest games, and I was taken as a kid, and I've just sort of held on to that as time's gone on. So, yeah, big Forest fan. I think relating sport to business, I think the most important thing is people have a perception of sales that it's a very single sport. It's a fairly sharky industry. People are out to help themselves. It's quite a lonely industry to be in. And actually, since joining Seismic, I've realized that you can act as a team and a team of sellers that are all directly competing against each other while still progressing your own career. And it's like football. You know, there's your Messis, your Ronaldos out on the football field that are all wanting to play well for them. You know, they want to get the big bucks. They want to get moved over to different clubs. They want to have the recognition, but they know as part of doing that, they've got to work as a team, and they've got to be that sort of figure in the side. So same with us. Seismic is the most collaborative team I've ever worked in. It's a really unique scenario where everyone is fighting against each other to be top spot, to be MVP, to go to President's Club, to win competitions, to earn commission. But I don't think I've ever heard anyone in my team say no if someone stops and goes, "Can you just show me how to do this?" or "Can you give me a hand with this?" or "What would you say in this scenario?" And I think that comes from a confidence as well. You know, being confident in your own ability and not feeling insecure to not want to help people to get ahead of yourself. And yeah, I bring that up because it's quite a unique thing in sales. I've worked in recruitment before. It was a very, very different environment there. You know, it was a fairly sort of lonely place to be, and you had your desk, and if people tried to encroach on that, then it'd get pretty nasty. Whereas software as an industry, because of the scope and size and scale of it, everyone can have a piece of the pie, and it doesn't have to be a sharky environment. So yeah, similar to football, you're out there to do what's best for you, but at the end of the day, you're not going to get ahead if you're not winning games and working as a team.
Final question from me. I really appreciate that as well. I think I absolutely love the similarities between sales and sports, and I think you can learn quite a lot about the other from the other. You can learn a lot about business from sports, learn a lot about sports from business. But in both of those professions, right, the biggest sort of thing that happens in both is failure, right? As a leader now, how do you sort of prepare your team to recover from failure, and how do you recover from failure as an individual? Because many people let failure have different effects on them. Some people, it can destroy them, and if it can destroy you, you probably don't belong in sales, right? But even though you can recover from it, there are different ways that people recover from it, and there's different perspectives that people take on failure. So what's your sort of perspective on failure, and how do you prepare your team to recover from a defeat and bounce back?
Yeah, it's a really good point. Probably one of the hardest skills in sales, regardless of how long you've been in sales for. It's tough. And also what I tell my team and what I do are, to be honest, two very different things. In theory, it's easy to teach someone how to. Yeah, it's really easy to teach someone how to deal with failure and how to get over it. But when it happens to you in your own environment, all of those bits of advice go out the window. So for me, I always ask the team to look at the bigger picture. You know, has someone hung up on you? Has someone said something pretty brutal to you on a phone call? Has a meeting not gone well? Do you feel like you've not done your best? And I just ask the team to rationalize it, put each individual failure in a box. It's not as big as you think. Put it in a box, put it to the side. And that's not a reflection of how your day's going, how your week's going, how your month's going. It's an individual situation that's happened, and you can rationalize that. So we're also selling. We're not brain surgeons, and I think at the end of the day, it's important that we bring in revenue and that we do deals, but it's not the world's most important thing. And I think just taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture sometimes and going, okay, am I fixating over this because it's that important, or am I fixating over this because I think it's that important? So yeah, preparing a team to fail is difficult. I quite like it when the team fail, bizarrely, because I think you learn a lot from failure. And if you're on the straight and narrow and you're always succeeding, the more you succeed, the harder that failure is. And I see members of the team heads go down, and it's difficult to recover from. But yeah, always looking at the bigger picture, realizing that it's not the end of the world, and being able to rationalize those 3-4 things happen in a day that you think means I'm a terrible salesperson, I've lost my mojo, is actually just a few disparate scenarios that you can get over and you can move on from, and also learn from, right? It's the biggest learning tool you could have is failing and understanding how to change your approach next time.
I appreciate that.
Awesome. Yeah, that was really valuable for me. I think lots of nuggets of wisdom that the listeners are gonna love. So Jay, if there's anything else from your side, I think, Glenn, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thanks so much. Very jealous of your trip to the US. But yeah, thanks again, and definitely keep in touch and we'll circle back after the summer.
Appreciate it. Thanks both, Johnny, Jack. Take care.
Glenn, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.